The note was waiting for me on the kitchen table. Not propped up against the sugar bowl or tucked under a magnet on the fridge, just lying there, flat on the oak surface I'd sanded and sealed myself 23 years ago. White paper, blue ink, handwriting I'd recognize anywhere because I'd watched it form, letter by letter, through homework assignments and birthday cards and grocery lists. My daughter's handwriting. I picked it up. My coffee was still hot in my hand, steam rising into the February cold that lived in this house no matter how high I cranked the thermostat. The furnace was original to 1987, and I kept meaning to replace it, but you know how that goes. You live with things. You adapt. The note said, "I'm sick of you, you useless old man. This house is sold. Pack your things and welcome to the trash heap." As the story unfolds, take a moment to like, hit the hype button, subscribe, and write in the comments. Would you forgive her or walk away? I read it twice. Not because I didn't understand the words. I understood them fine. I read it twice because I was waiting for my brain to catch up to what my eyes were seeing, waiting for the shock to hit, waiting for something to break inside me the way things are supposed to break when your own daughter calls you useless and tells you she's sold your house out from under you. The shock didn't come. What came instead was clarity. I set my coffee down. I turned the note over. On the back, in the blank white space, I wrote 2 words with the pen she'd left on the table. 2 words, that's all. Then I left the note exactly where I'd found it, face down, and I walked out to my truck. When she read what I wrote, I got 87 missed calls. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up 3 weeks, to the day this all started, to the afternoon Amanda and Richard came over with their leather folder and their concerned faces and their plan to help. They'd called ahead. Amanda always called ahead now, ever since she'd married Richard and started selling real estate and bought that house in the gated community on the north side where all the streets had names like Windermere Circle and Ashford Glen, names that sounded like English manors but looked like vinyl-sided boxes built too close together. "Dad, can we come by Saturday? Around 2? Richard and I want to talk to you and Mom about some financial planning stuff." Financial planning stuff. That should have been my first warning. They showed up at 1:47 p.m. Amanda liked being early because it made her look eager and professional. And they came in with smiles and a folder full of papers, and Richard shook my hand with that grip he'd perfected, the one that was firm enough to seem confident, but not so firm it seemed aggressive. "Frank, good to see you, sir." He called me sir, the way people call cops officer. Not out of respect, but out of strategy. Clara made coffee. Amanda sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd find her note 3 weeks later, and she arranged the papers in front of her like she was setting up a hand of cards. "So, Dad, we've been talking to our financial advisor, and we think there's a really smart way to protect your assets as you and Mom get older. Protect your assets as you get older." She was 34 years old. I'd taught her to ride a bike in the driveway outside. I'd paid for her college, her car, her wedding, half the down payment on that fake English manor house where she now lived, and judged people like me for having old furnaces and trucks with rust spots. "What kind of protection are we talking about?" Clara asked. She was sitting next to me, her hand on my knee under the table. She already didn't like where this was going. Clara's got instincts like a smoke detector. Richard leaned forward. "Well, the thing is, if something happens, medical emergency, long-term care, anything like that, your assets can be seized to cover costs. But if you transfer certain properties into a family trust now, while you're both healthy, you create a legal shield." "It's really common," Amanda added. "Everyone does it. Everyone does it. That's what people say when they want you to stop thinking and start signing. I should have asked more questions. I should have taken the papers to a lawyer. I should have told them both to get the hell out of my house. But I didn't, because she was my daughter. Because I wanted to believe she was trying to help. Because I was tired, 65 years old, tired in my bones, tired in my brain, tired of figuring out the angles on everything. So I signed. I signed a transfer of limited authority. I signed a temporary property management agreement. I signed a release that allowed Amanda, as a licensed real estate broker, to explore options on my behalf. I signed the papers that would let her sell my house without asking me. Richard witnessed. Amanda notarized. She had her stamp right there in her purse, ready to go. They were gone by 2:35 p.m. That felt wrong, Clara said after they left. It's fine, I told her. It's just paperwork. Covers us if something happens. She looked at me the way she'd looked at me 42 years ago, when I told her the used Camaro I'd just bought was a great deal. Like she could see the future, I couldn't. Frank, she said, that girl is up to something. The second warning came 10 days later. I was in the garage trying to resurrect a lawnmower I'd picked up at an estate sale when Amanda's car pulled into the driveway. Not the sedan she usually drove, the Range Rover, Richard's car. That meant Richard was with her. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked out into the February cold. They were both getting out, Amanda from the passenger side, Richard from the driver's. They were dressed like they'd just come from a meeting. Amanda in a camel coat and boots, Richard in a suit without a tie, the kind of outfit that says, I'm important, but also approachable. Hey, Dad, Amanda said. She had sunglasses on even though the sky was gray. Do you have a minute? Sure. We went inside. Clara was in the living room, reading. She looked up when we came in, and I saw her jaw tighten. She didn't say hello. We wanted to give you an update, Amanda said, sitting down on the couch without being invited. Richard stayed standing, hands in his pockets, looking around the room like he was appraising it. We've had some interest in the property, Richard said. What property? I asked. This one, Amanda said. She smiled. It was her realtor smile, the one that didn't reach her eyes. The house. We put it on the market last week. Quiet listing just to test the waters, and we've already got 2 serious offers. The floor dropped out from under me. You what? It's okay, Dad. This is what we talked about. The trust, the asset protection. This is part of the strategy. We didn't talk about selling the house. We talked about exploring options, Richard said. His voice was calm, patient, like he was explaining multiplication to a child. This is an option, and it's a good one. The market's hot right now. You could clear $300,000 easy after closing costs. $300,000. For the house I'd bought in 1981 for $42,000. The house where I'd raised my daughter, buried 2 dogs in the backyard, replaced the roof twice, remodeled the kitchen, built the deck, poured the concrete patio, planted the oak tree out front that was now taller than the roofline. We're not selling, Clara said from across the room. Amanda's smile got tighter. Mom, I know this is hard. Change is always hard, but you guys don't need this much space anymore, and the property taxes are only going to go up. We found a really nice rental community out on Route 40, active senior living, low maintenance. You'd love it. We're not selling, Clara said again. Richard sighed. It was a theatrical sigh, the kind that says, I'm trying to be patient, but you're making this difficult. Frank, he said, looking at me, not at Clara. This is a smart financial move. You signed the papers. You gave us authority to act on your behalf. We're acting. I didn't give you authority to sell my house. You gave us authority to manage your assets in your best interest. He pulled out his phone, scrolled, held it up so I could see the screen. It's right here, Section 4, Paragraph B. Agent may market, sell, or otherwise dispose of property as deemed financially advantageous. I stared at the screen. The words were too small to read from where I stood. You can't do this, I said. We already did, Amanda said softly. We accepted an offer this morning. Closing is in 30 days. The room tilted. Clara stood up. Get out. Mom, get out of my house. Amanda's face went hard. She stood up, grabbed her purse, looked at me. You're being emotional, that's understandable. But in a few months, when you're settled and you realize how much easier your life is, You're going to thank us." They left. I stood in the living room, listening to the Range Rover start up and back out of the driveway, listening to Clara's breathing beside me, fast and shallow, like she'd been running. "They can't do this," she said. "Can they?" I thought about the papers I'd signed, the words I hadn't read carefully, the trust I'd given because she was my daughter. "I think they already did," I said. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Clara, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me, the creak of the beams, the whisper of wind against the windows, the hum of that ancient furnace kicking on and off. My house. I'd built half of it with my own hands. Not literally built. The bones were here when I bought it. But I'd rebuilt. New electrical in '89 after the inspector told me the old knob and tube wiring was a fire waiting to happen. New plumbing in '94 when the galvanized pipes finally gave up. Drywall, insulation, fixtures, floors. I'd torn out the old kitchen in 2003 and installed the cabinets myself, one at a time, making sure every corner was square, every door hung true. I knew every inch of this place, every stud, every joist, every wire behind every wall. And my daughter, who I'd raised in these rooms, had just told me she was selling it out from under me and moving me to a rental community on Route 40. Welcome to the trash heap. She hadn't said those words yet, but she was thinking them. I could hear it in her voice, see it in the way she looked around the living room like she was cataloging everything that was old, outdated, beneath her. I got out of bed at 3 a.m. and went down to the kitchen. I made coffee. I sat at the table and I tried to think. There had to be a way out, a lawyer, a loophole, some clause in those papers I'd signed that would let me undo this. But even as I thought it, I knew. I'd worked as a building inspector for 30 years. I'd seen every kind of contract, every kind of scam, every way people found to screw each other over on paper. And the one thing I'd learned was this. Once you sign, you're done. The law doesn't care if you were tired or trusting or stupid. The law cares what the paper says. I'd signed, and now I was going to lose my house. Unless. I sat there in the dark kitchen, drinking bitter coffee, and I felt something shift inside me. Not grief, not panic. Something colder, something with edges. They'd outsmarted me with papers and legal words and smiles. Fine, they were good at that. Amanda had always been good at talking, at selling, at making bad things sound good. But I was good at other things. I was good at seeing how things were built, how systems worked, how to find the weak points, the load-bearing walls, the places where pressure applied carefully would make the whole structure come down. I'd spent 3 decades looking at buildings and seeing what was wrong with them. The shortcuts contractors took, the code violations they tried to hide, the ways they cut corners and hoped no one would notice. Amanda and Richard thought they were builders, developers, visionaries. But I'd looked at enough buildings to know the prettier the facade, the more rot you find underneath. I just had to find it. The note appeared 4 days later. I came downstairs that morning and there it was, lying on the kitchen table like a piece of mail. White paper, blue ink, Amanda's handwriting. "I'm sick of you, you useless old man. This house is sold. Pack your things and welcome to the trash heap." I stood there holding it, reading it again and again, waiting to feel something. Hurt, anger, betrayal. What I felt was clarity. She'd put it in writing. All that contempt, all that cruelty she'd been dressing up in realtor speak and financial jargon, she'd finally just said it. Useless old man. Trash heap. I turned the note over, picked up the pen she'd left on the table, wrote 2 words on the back. Prove it. Then I left the note there, face down, and walked out. By noon they came with the boxes. Amanda and Richard and 2 guys in t-shirts who looked like they'd been hired off Craigslist. They came in without knocking. Amanda had a key, of course she had a key, and they started packing up my life. "We're just here to help with the transition," Amanda said when I came downstairs. She wouldn't look at me. The closing got moved up. New buyer wants possession in 2 weeks, so we need to get you relocated quickly. Relocated. Like I was a factory being moved overseas. Where's Mom? I asked. She's at her sister's. We thought it would be easier if you sent her away. We asked her to give us space to work. Dad, you're making this harder than it needs to be. One of the Craigslist guys came down the stairs carrying a box labeled Master Bedroom. My clothes, my books, my alarm clock, my life. Where are you taking that? I asked. Storage unit out on Highway 55, Richard said. He was standing in the doorway to the living room, arms crossed. Month-to-month rental. We'll cover the first 3 months while you get settled. While you get settled, like this was a vacation. And where exactly am I settling? Amanda finally looked at me. Her face was blank, professional, the face she used with difficult clients. There's a place called Meadowbrook Estates. It's nice, clean, affordable. How affordable? $800 a month for a 1-bedroom. $800 a month to live in some rundown apartment complex on the edge of town while they pocketed $300,000 from the sale of my house. No, I said. Dad, no. Richard stepped forward. Frank, you don't have a choice here. The house is sold. The papers are signed. You need to accept reality and move on. Accept reality. I looked at him. This man who'd never built anything, never fixed anything, never worked a real job in his life. This man who made his money moving other people's money around and calling it investing. This man who my daughter had married and who had turned her into something cold. Reality, I said. You want to talk about reality? Dad, please don't. Reality is, I built this house. Reality is, I paid for everything you own. Reality is you're stealing from me because you know I'm too old and too tired to fight back. That's not, Amanda started. Reality, I said, louder now, is that you just called your father a useless old man and threw him away like garbage, in writing. And now you're going to find out what happens when garbage doesn't stay where you put it. The room went quiet. Richard's jaw tightened. Are you threatening us? I'm informing you, I said. There's a difference. Dad, you're being emotionally unstable right now, Amanda said. Her voice was shaking slightly. We're trying to help you. Why can't you see that? I could have answered, could have explained, could have tried one more time to make her understand what she was doing, what she was destroying. But I didn't. Because I realized, standing there in my living room watching strangers pack up my belongings, that she already understood. She knew exactly what she was doing. She just didn't care. And that meant I didn't have to care either. I walked past her, past Richard, past the Craigslist guys with their boxes. I walked out to my truck, climbed in, started the engine. I drove to Clara's sister's house on the south side. Let myself in with the key they kept under the planter. Clara was sitting at the kitchen table, crying silently, her face in her hands. I sat down across from her, waited. Finally, she looked up. They're really doing this. Yeah. What are we going to do? I thought about the note, the 2 words I'd written, the challenge I'd thrown down. Prove it. Prove I'm useless. Prove I'm trash. Prove you have the right to do this. We're going to make them prove it, I said. She wiped her eyes. How? I don't know yet, I said, but I'm going to figure it out. That night, I slept in my truck in the Walmart parking lot on Route 40. I could have stayed at Clara's sister's house, but I needed to be alone. Needed to think. I sat in the cab with the engine off, wrapped in a blanket, watching people come and go under the yellow lights. Night shift workers, insomniacs, people buying milk and bread at midnight because they couldn't sleep either. I thought about Amanda, about the girl she'd been and the woman she'd become. She'd always been ambitious, smart, driven. I'd been proud of that. I'd encouraged it. When she'd told me she wanted to get her real estate license, I'd paid for the courses. When she'd told me she was marrying Richard, I'd paid for half the wedding even though I thought he was a parasite in a suit. I'd given her everything, And she'd learned, somewhere along the way, that everything wasn't enough. That what she really wanted was to not be associated with where she came from. To not be the daughter of a building inspector who drove a truck with rust spots and lived in a house with an old furnace. She wanted to be someone else. And I was in the way. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, found a name I hadn't called in 3 years, Elaine Porter. She'd worked with me in the city inspections office, back before she'd retired and moved to Florida. She'd been the one who handled permits, zoning variances, code compliance files. She knew the system inside and out, not just the rules, but how people bent them, broke them, hid the evidence. I hesitated. It was almost 1 a.m. But then I thought about the note, about the Craigslist guys packing up my house, about Clara crying at her sister's kitchen table. I called. She answered on the 4th ring. "Frank? Jesus, it's the middle of the night. Someone better be gone." "Not yet," I said, "but I need your help." Elaine flew back 2 days later. We met at a diner on the East Side, the kind of place with vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the Carter administration. She looked good, tanned, relaxed, wearing sandals and a Florida Gators t-shirt even though it was February and barely 40 degrees outside. "You look like hell," she said when she saw me. "I'm living in my truck." "Your daughter really kicked you out?" "Sold the house out from under me, literally." She shook her head. "I always knew that girl was cold. Even when she was little, there was something about her, like she was calculating the angles." The waitress came over. We ordered coffee and eggs and toast neither of us would eat. When she left, Elaine leaned forward. "Okay, tell me everything," I told her. The papers, the trust, the transfer of authority, the quiet listing, the accepted offer, the note on the kitchen table. By the time I finished, my coffee was cold. Elaine was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You know what you signed was probably legal." "I know." "So you can't just undo it. Can't sue her for fraud if she didn't technically defraud you." "I know that too." "So, what do you want from me?" I looked at her. "I want to know what she's really doing, not the house. That's already gone. I mean her business, Richard's business, their deals, their clients, their projects. I want to know where the bodies are buried." Elaine smiled. It was the smile of someone who'd spent 30 years watching people lie on permit applications. "You think she's dirty. I know she's dirty. I just don't know how. What makes you so sure?" "Because," I said, "nobody gets that successful that fast in real estate without cutting corners, and Richard's got corner cutter written all over him." Elaine pulled out her phone, started typing. "What's her business name?" "Reeves Property Group. Richard's the LLC holder. Amanda's got the broker license." More typing. Then she turned the phone to show me. "They've got 6 active projects listed on the county development site. Rehabs, flips, a small commercial conversion. You know any of these addresses?" I looked at the screen. Most of them I didn't recognize, but one of them, 4738 Oakmont Drive, made me stop. "That one," I said. "I know that one." "How?" "I inspected it 2 years ago. Owner wanted to add a second-floor addition, needed permits for structural reinforcement, new electrical, HVAC upgrade. I failed the inspection 3 times before they finally hired a real contractor and did it right. And now Richard owns it? Apparently?" Elaine took her phone back, scrolled. "Says here it's listed as fully renovated, code-compliant, move-in ready. Sold 4 months ago for $460,000. I thought about that house, about the foundation cracks I'd documented, the outdated wiring, the HVAC system that was undersized for the new square footage. There's no way they fixed all that in 2 years, not properly. So they lied. Or they faked the documentation." Elaine grinned. "Now we're talking. You know what you need?" "Tell me." "Access. You need to get inside these projects, physically inside, paperwork inside, and see what's really there versus what they're claiming. How? Same way anyone gets inside a construction project. You work there. I stared at her. You want me to get a job with Richard? Not with him. For him. Subcontractor, day labor, maintenance guy, whatever. These developers always need warm bodies for grunt work. You show up, you keep your mouth shut, you see everything. He knows what I look like. Does he? You said he barely looked at you when they came to the house. Guys like that don't see people like you. You're just furniture to them. She leaned back. Plus, you cut your hair, grow a beard, wear a different jacket. You really think he's going to recognize you at a job site at 6 a.m.? I thought about it. About Richard standing in my living room with his arms crossed. About Amanda with her sunglasses on, her camel coat, her realtor smile. About the note. Useless old man. What do I do once I'm inside? I asked. You look, you photograph, you copy, and then you send everything to me, and I'll tell you what it means. And then? Then we burn them down. The first job site I tried was a commercial conversion on Madison Street, an old warehouse Richard was turning into modern loft apartments. The ad on Craigslist said they needed general labor, no experience necessary, $12 an hour. I showed up at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd cut my hair short, stopped shaving. I was wearing a jacket I'd bought at Goodwill and work boots I'd had since the 90s. I looked like every other aging construction grunt trying to make rent. The foreman's name was Dale. He looked me up and down, asked if I could lift 50 pounds and show up on time. I said yes to both. He handed me a broom and told me to sweep out Unit 3. That was it. I was in. For the first week, I just swept, hauled debris, moved materials from the truck to wherever Dale pointed. I kept my head down and my mouth shut, and I watched. Richard showed up twice that week. Both times he was dressed like he'd just come from a board meeting. Slacks, button-down shirt, leather shoes that would be ruined in 5 minutes on a real job site. He walked around with a clipboard, talking on his phone, pointing at things. He never once looked at me. I was invisible. Perfect. The second week, I started paying attention to the details. The electrical boxes that were labeled as new but looked 20 years old. The drywall that went up over insulation that was still pink and fresh, not the R30 rigid foam the permits claimed. The sprinkler system that had heads in all the right places, but no water pressure to actually make them work. I took pictures, close-ups of serial numbers, permit stickers, inspection stamps, shots of the sprinkler manifold showing the undersized supply line, the electrical panel with the missing breakers. At night, I sent them all to Elaine. She sent back analysis, code violations, permit discrepancies, material substitutions that weren't disclosed, enough to get the project shut down for re-inspection, which would reveal that half the work was never done right in the first place. But that wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed the paperwork, the contracts, the invoices showing what Richard actually paid for versus what he claimed, the bids, the financials. I needed to get into the site office. The site office was a trailer at the back of the parking lot. Dale had the key, but he usually left it unlocked during the day when he was working. The problem was the camera mounted above the door, motion activated, recording to a cloud server Richard probably checked every night from his couch. I had to wait for the right moment. It came on a Thursday afternoon. Dale got called away to another one of Richard's projects, some crisis with a county inspector who was threatening to red tag a whole building. He told everyone to keep working. He'd be back in 2 hours. The moment his truck pulled out of the lot, I grabbed my phone and walked to the trailer. The door was unlocked, just like I'd hoped. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me. The camera was recording, but at this point, I didn't care. I'd be done before anyone thought to check the footage. The trailer was exactly what I expected. A desk, a filing cabinet, a bulletin board covered in permits and schedules and inspection notices. I started with the filing cabinet. 10 minutes. That's all I had before someone might notice I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I pulled open the top drawer. Manila folders labeled by project address. I found the one for Madison Street and flipped it open. Inside, contracts, invoices, material orders, inspection reports. I started photographing. One page after another, as fast as I could while still keeping them in focus. Contract showing the electrical upgrade budget, $40,000. Invoice from the electrical subcontractor, $12,000. Where did the other $28,000 go? More photos. Materials invoice showing standard fiberglass insulation delivered, not rigid foam. Inspection report dated 6 weeks ago, signed off by a city inspector I knew had retired 3 months before that date. Forged. I kept shooting, page after page, document after document. My hands were shaking, but I forced them steady. Then I heard voices outside. I shoved the folder back, closed the drawer, moved to the door. Looked out through the small window. Dale's truck was back. He was talking to someone, another contractor, maybe, or a supplier. They were standing by the trailer, 15 feet away. I was trapped. I looked around the trailer. One door, one window, too small to climb through, no back exit, nothing. The voices got closer. I made a decision. I sat down at the desk, pulled out my phone, and pretended to be reading something on the screen. The door opened. Dale came in, stopped when he saw me. "The hell are you doing in here?" I looked up. "Sorry, man. I had to take a leak and the porta potty's full. I was just trying to call about getting it pumped." Dale stared at me. I could see him trying to decide if I was lying. Finally, he said, "There's a gas station 2 blocks away. Use their bathroom next time." "Got it. Sorry." I stood up, walked past him, out into the cold afternoon. My heart was hammering, but I kept my face blank, bored, just another tired worker who needed to piss. Behind me, Dale closed the trailer door. Locked it this time. I went back to sweeping Unit 3, and that night I sent Elaine 37 photos of documents that showed Richard Reeves was running a fraud so blatant, it was almost beautiful. "He's using a shell LLC to inflate costs," Elaine told me over the phone that night. "He bills the investors for $40,000 in electrical, pays the contractor $12,000, and keeps the difference. Same with the insulation, the sprinkler system, probably the HVAC too. I'd bet my pension he's doing this on every project." "Can we prove it?" "You just sent me the proof. Invoices don't lie." "What about the inspection report? The one signed by a guy who's been retired for months?" "That's fraud. Straight-up document fraud. You bring that to the state licensing board. Amanda loses her broker license. You bring it to the DA. Richard goes to prison." I sat in my truck, phone pressed to my ear, thinking. Going to the DA was one option. But that was slow. Investigations, charges, trials. It could take years. And in the meantime, Amanda would lawyer up. Richard would hide assets. They'd find a way to spin it or settle or make it all go away. I didn't want slow. I didn't want years. I wanted them to feel what I'd felt when I read that note. I wanted them to lose everything immediately, in front of everyone. "What if we don't go to the DA?" I said. "What do you mean?" "What if we go to the investors instead?" Silence on the line. Then, "You want to burn him in public." "I want to burn both of them. Amanda's name is on every one of these deals, her license, her signature, her reputation. She goes down with him. That's scorched earth, Frank. That's the idea." Another pause. Then Elaine said, "All right, tell me what you're thinking." Over the next 2 weeks, I kept working, kept sweeping, hauling, watching. I got assigned to 2 more projects, a residential flip on Elm Street and a small office renovation downtown. Same pattern everywhere. Inflated invoices, cheap materials, forged inspections. Richard was running the same scam on every project, and Amanda was the licensed broker providing cover. And I documented all of it. Photos of every invoice, every contract, every permit, every inspection stamp. I even got my hands on the investor prospectuses, glossy brochures showing projected returns, property photos, Richard's smiling face next to language about proven track record and boutique attention to detail. It was all lies, and now I had proof. The question was how to deploy it. Elaine had the answer. They're having a showcase event next month, March 15th. Investor open house at the Madison Street project. Amanda's hosting. It's her big night. She's trying to line up 3 more projects, and she needs these investors happy and writing checks. How do you know? Because it's on her business Facebook page. She's been promoting it for weeks. I pulled up Amanda's page on my phone. Sure enough, there it was. A glossy promotional post with professional photos and language about exclusive investment opportunity and limited availability. March 15th, 3 weeks away. That's where we do it, I said. Do what? Hand them the evidence, physical packets, one for every investor, every lender, every city official who might be there. We put it directly into their hands while they're standing in front of Amanda and Richard. That's bold. That's the point. You'll need help. You can't just walk in there and start handing out folders. Security will throw you out. I won't walk in. I'll already be there. How? I'll be working the event, I said. Caterer, maintenance, setup crew, whatever. I'll find a way. Elaine laughed. You're really doing this? Yeah. All right. I'll help you put the packets together. Everything organized, indexed, sourced. Make it look professional so they can't dismiss it as angry old man rambling. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This could still go sideways. Amanda's going to know it was you. Good, I said. I want her to know. The packets took a week to assemble. Elaine printed everything at a FedEx store in Florida and shipped them to me in a box marked books. 32 manila folders, each one containing the same documents, contracts, invoices, material orders, inspection reports, photos, a cover page with bullet-pointed summary of the fraud. Professional, damning, impossible to ignore. I stored them in my truck, under the back seat, wrapped in a garbage bag. Clara asked me once what I was planning. I told her the truth. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Are you sure? Once you do this, there's no taking it back." I'm sure. She's still your daughter. She stopped being my daughter when she called me trash. Clara nodded. Then do it. Make her feel it. Getting hired for the event was easier than I expected. Amanda had posted about needing professional event staff on a gig work app. I applied using a burner email and a fake name, Tom Harper. Former banquet server, references available. I got called for an interview. Not with Amanda, she didn't bother with the help, but with some event coordinator named Michelle who met me at a Starbucks and asked if I had black pants and a white shirt. I said yes. She said, "You're hired. March 15th, 5 p.m. setup. Event starts at 7. $50 for the night. Cash. $50 to burn down my daughter's life. Deal." March 15th came cold and clear. I showed up at the Madison Street site at 5 p.m., dressed in black pants and a white button-down shirt I'd bought at Walmart. Michelle was already there, setting up tables, directing other workers where to put the chairs and the catering trays and the poster boards with glossy photos of completed units. It looked impressive. If you didn't know what was behind the walls, you'd think Richard Reeves was a legitimate developer. But I knew. I spent the next 2 hours setting up chairs and moving tables and pretending to care about whether the hummus went on the left or the right. The whole time, I was watching the layout, planning my move. The investors would arrive at 7. Amanda would greet them, give them the tour, show them the units, pitch them on the next projects. Richard would work the room, shaking hands, doing his smooth talking routine. And at some point during the night when everyone was gathered in the main presentation space, I'd distribute the packets. Simple, clean, devastating. At 6:45, Amanda arrived. She looked perfect. Black dress, heels, hair, and makeup done professionally. She walked in like she owned the place, which technically Richard did, but she carried herself like it was hers. Richard came in 5 minutes later, also dressed sharp. They moved through the space together, checking details, adjusting lights, making sure everything was perfect. I stayed in the back, arranging wine glasses, invisible. At 7 p.m., the investors started arriving. There were maybe 40 people total. Some I recognized from around town, business owners, retired doctors, people with money looking to make more money. Others I didn't know, but they all had the same look. Successful, confident, used to getting returns. Amanda worked the room like a pro, smiling, shaking hands, introducing people to each other. Richard stayed near the front, next to a podium with a microphone. At 7:30, Amanda called everyone to attention. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. Richard and I are so excited to share this project with you and to talk about some incredible opportunities we have coming up. She started the presentation, slides on a screen showing before and after photos, financial projections, testimonials from previous investors. Her voice was smooth, practiced, persuasive. I watched from the side of the room, holding an empty tray, waiting. Around 8 p.m. there was a break. People mingled, grabbed food and drinks, talked among themselves. This was my window. I went to my truck, pulled out the box of packets, brought them inside through a side door, stashed them behind the catering table. Then I started moving through the room. I picked investors who were standing alone or in small groups. I'd approach, smile, say quietly, "Excuse me, sir, this came for you," and hand them a folder. Most of them took it without thinking. A few asked what it was. I'd just say, "Documentation. You'll want to read it." I moved fast. 1 folder, 2, 3. By the time I'd handed out 10, people were starting to open them, starting to read. I saw faces change, confusion, concern, anger. One man, older guy in a suit, looked up from the folder, scanned the room, called out, "Richard, I need a word." Richard, who'd been laughing with someone near the food table, turned. "Sure, Don. What's up?" Don held up the folder. "What the hell is this?" The room started to quiet. Amanda noticed. Her smile faltered. "Is there a problem?" "Yeah, there's a problem." Don walked over, shoved the folder at Richard. "Someone just handed me this. Says you've been inflating invoices and faking inspections. Care to explain?" Richard's face went pale. He opened the folder, looked at the first page. I kept moving. More folders, more investors, more confusion spreading through the room like a stain. Amanda's eyes swept the crowd, looking for the source, looking for who was doing this. She saw me. Our eyes met across the room. For just a second, she didn't recognize me. I was just one of the help, one of the invisible people. Then her face changed. She knew. "Dad?" The word came out strangled, disbelieving. I didn't answer, just handed another folder to a woman in a gray suit standing next to Amanda. The woman took it automatically, opened it, started reading. Amanda's face went from white to red. "What are you doing?" "Proving it," I said. Richard pushed through the crowd toward me. Frank, what the hell is this? What did you give them?" "The truth," I said. "Contracts, invoices, inspection reports you forged, everything you've been lying about." More people were opening their folders now. I could see it spreading. The realization, the anger, the sense of betrayal. A man near the front shouted, "These inspection dates are fake. This signature is from a guy who retired months before this date." Another voice, "These material costs don't match. You charged me $40,000 for electrical work that cost $12,000. Richard spun toward the crowd, hands up, voice going into smooth-talking crisis mode. "Okay, hold on. Everyone there's clearly been some kind of mix-up here. These documents are out of context." "Out of context?" Don stepped forward, holding up a page. "This is your signature on the contract. These are your LLCs on the invoices. How is this out of context?" Amanda grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, desperate. "Dad, stop. Please. We can fix this. We can talk. I pulled my arm away. You had your chance to talk. You chose a note instead. What note? What are you? I reached into my pocket, pulled out the folded piece of paper I'd been carrying for 3 weeks, opened it, showed her, her handwriting, her words. I'm sick of you, you useless old man. This house is sold. Pack your things and welcome to the trash heap. She stared at it. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. You wrote that, I said. You put it on my kitchen table and you walked away. So I flipped it over and I wrote 2 words on the back, you remember? She was shaking her head, tears starting. Dad? I turned the note over, showed her the other side. Prove it. Prove I'm useless, I said. Prove I'm trash. Prove you did everything by the book and you've got nothing to hide. That's what I wrote. That's the challenge. Her face crumpled. You're destroying us. You're destroying everything we built. I didn't build it, I said. You did, with fake inspections and inflated invoices and my name as a prop to make investors feel safe. I'm just showing people what you built. Richard was yelling now, trying to regain control of the room, but it was chaos. Investors arguing with each other, pulling out phones, taking photos of the documents. Someone was calling their lawyer. Someone else was demanding their money back immediately. The whole thing was collapsing. Amanda turned away from me, tried to address the crowd. Everyone, please. My father is upset about a family issue, and he's trying to sabotage us. These documents are misleading. If you'll just give us a chance to... Are these inspection reports forged? A woman's voice, sharp and clear. Amanda hesitated. The dates might be... There may have been some administrative errors. That's not an administrative error. That's fraud. The room erupted again. I watched Amanda try to hold it together, watched her realtor smile crack and fall away, watched her realize that all her smooth talking, all her presentations and pitches and professional polish couldn't fix this. You can't talk your way out of documents. You can't smile your way out of proof. Richard grabbed her arm, pulled her aside. I could see him hissing something at her, his face furious. She was crying now, mascara running, the perfect facade completely gone. Michelle, the event coordinator, appeared next to me. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm done anyway, I said. I walked out through the side door into the cold March night. Behind me, I could hear the chaos continuing, voices raised, accusations flying, the sound of everything Amanda and Richard had built coming apart. I got in my truck, started the engine, sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, breathing. My phone buzzed, one missed call, then another, then another. I looked at the screen, all from Amanda. I watched the notifications stack up, 5 calls, 10, 15. She was panicking, trying to reach me, trying to stop this. Too late. I turned the phone off and drove to the motel where Clara was waiting. She was sitting on the bed when I came in, watching TV with the sound off. How'd it go? She asked. It went, I said. I sat down next to her, pulled out my phone, turned it back on. The missed calls kept coming. 20, 30, 40. Clara looked at the screen. She's melting down. Good. You feel better? I thought about it, about the look on Amanda's face when she'd realized what I'd done, about Richard trying to spin his way out of a room full of angry investors, about the chaos, the collapse, the ruin. Yeah, I said. I do. No regrets? Not one. Clara nodded, took my hand. Good. She earned this. We sat there in the motel room, watching my phone light up over and over with Amanda's calls. By midnight, the count was at 73. By morning, it was at 87. 87 missed calls from my daughter, begging me to fix what I'd broken. I never answered a single one. The fallout moved fast. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Local news picked it up first. Real estate fraud exposed at investor event. Then the business blogs, then the regional papers. Someone had recorded video of the chaos and posted it online. I watched it once. Amanda crying, Richard shouting, investors waving the folders I'd handed them. It was brutal. It was perfect. Clara and I checked out of the motel and drove to her sister's house. I didn't want to be findable, not yet. I wanted to watch the fire burn from a distance. Elaine called that afternoon. "Have you seen the news?" "Yeah. State Licensing Board opened an investigation this morning. Amanda's broker license is suspended pending review. Richard's got 3 lawsuits filed already, investors demanding their money back." "How bad is it?" "Bad. The bank that was financing their next project pulled out. Their insurance carrier dropped them. The city building department put a stop work order on everything they have active. They're done, Frank. Completely done." I should have felt something. Guilt, maybe. Regret. Some small flicker of sadness for what I'd destroyed. I felt nothing but satisfaction. "Good," I said. "You know she's going to keep calling." "I know. She's going to show up eventually. Try to talk to you face to face." "Let her try." Elaine was quiet for a moment. Then, "You did the right thing. She had this coming." "I know," I said. "I just wish I'd done it sooner." Amanda showed up 3 days later. I was sitting on Clara's sister's porch drinking coffee when her Range Rover pulled up to the curb. She got out slowly, like she wasn't sure she had the strength. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing sweatpants and an old jacket. She walked up the driveway, stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. "Dad," she said. Her voice was hoarse. "Please, I need to talk to you." I didn't answer. "Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "You asked for a lot more than 5 minutes when you sold my house." She flinched. I know I hurt you. I know I screwed up. But what you did, Dad, you destroyed everything. Everything Richard and I worked for. Everything you stole, you mean. We didn't." She stopped, took a breath. "Okay. Maybe we cut some corners. Maybe we push some boundaries. But that's how business works. That's how you get ahead. By lying to investors? By forging inspection reports? Those were Richard's calls, not mine. Your name was on the deals. Your license, your signature." She closed her eyes. "I didn't know how far he'd gone, I swear." "You knew enough." "Dad. You knew enough to use my name to make investors feel safe. You knew enough to let him run those scams under your license. You knew enough to throw me out of my house and call me trash." She started crying. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I was angry and stupid, and I said things I didn't mean." "You meant them," I said. "That's the problem. You looked at me and you saw something you wanted to throw away. So I showed you what happens when trash fights back. You ruined my life. You ruined mine first." She sobbed harder. "I lost everything. My license, my business. Richard's talking about leaving me. The investors are suing. We might lose the house. We might lose everything." "Good." She looked up at me, eyes red and streaming. "How can you be so cruel? I'm your daughter. You're supposed to love me." "I did love you," I said. "I loved you enough to pay for your college, your car, your wedding, your life, and you thanked me by treating me like garbage. I made a mistake. You made a choice. There's a difference." She stood there shaking, waiting for me to give her something. Forgiveness, sympathy, some way back. I gave her nothing. Finally, she said, "What do you want from me? What can I do to fix this?" "Nothing," I said. "You can't fix it. It's done." "So that's it? You're just done with me?" "You were done with me first. I'm just returning the favor." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back to her car, got in, drove away. I watched her taillights disappear around the corner. Clara came out onto the porch. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm fine." "She'll try again. She won't give up that easy." "Let her try," I said. "I'm done giving her chances." Over the next week, the damage reports kept coming in. Richard's LLC filed for bankruptcy. 3 different law firms announced they were representing investors in civil suits. The state licensing board formally revoked Amanda's broker license. A county prosecutor opened a criminal investigation into the forged inspection reports. Richard and Amanda tried to spin it, claimed I had fabricated the documents, that I was a bitter old man making false accusations. But they couldn't explain away the invoices, the contracts, the photographs. The evidence was too clean, too thorough. They were drowning, and I watched it happen with no sympathy at all. Elaine called with updates every few days. Richard's trying to pin everything on Amanda, says she was the licensed broker, she was responsible for compliance, he was just the money guy. Will that work? Not a chance. His name is on every LLC, every contract. He can't just walk away. Good. How are you doing? Really? I'm fine, I said. Better than fine, actually. No regrets? Not one. She laughed. You're cold, Frank. I like it. Clara and I moved into a small rental house on the south side. 2 bedrooms, old but clean, cheap. The landlord didn't ask many questions. We signed a month-to-month lease and moved our stuff out of storage. It wasn't much, but it was ours, and nobody could take it. At night, I'd sit on the back porch and think about what I'd done, about Amanda's face when she'd realized I was the one handing out those folders, about Richard trying to talk his way out of a room full of angry investors, about the 87 missed calls that I'd never returned. Some people might have felt guilty, might have wondered if they'd gone too far. I felt nothing but peace. She'd called me useless, called me trash, thrown me away like I was nothing, and I'd shown her exactly what nothing could do when you underestimated it. The showcase night had been a month ago. The lawsuits were in full swing now. Richard was trying to settle, but the investors wanted revenge. Amanda had hired a lawyer, but her legal bills were eating whatever money they had left. I followed it all online, news articles, court filings, social media posts from angry investors. It was everything I'd hoped for. But there was one more thing I needed to see. The investor showcase had been Richard and Amanda's big night, the event where they were supposed to secure funding for 3 new projects and prove they were still legitimate. Instead, it had been the night everything collapsed. But there was one detail I'd only learned later. Something Elaine had found buried in Amanda's business filings. They'd been planning a second showcase, a bigger one, a partnership with a major commercial lender, 50 investors invited, 6 figures in commitments on the line. That event was scheduled for April 20th, and Amanda was desperate enough to try to hold it anyway. I found out from a post on her business Facebook page, the same page where she'd promoted the first event. This time the post was cautious, defensive. Despite recent challenges, Reeves Property Group remains committed to excellence and transparency. Join us April 20th for an exclusive look at our upcoming projects. The comments were vicious, people calling her a scammer, a fraud, a liar. But she'd left the post up anyway. She was going to try to salvage this. I called Elaine. She's doing another event. I saw she's out of her mind. Maybe she thinks she can talk her way out of this. You know Amanda, she's always believed she could sell anything. You going? Not invited, I said. But I'll be there anyway. April 20th came warm and humid, the first real taste of spring. The event was at a hotel downtown, a conference room on the 2nd floor. I showed up early, dressed in the same black pants and white shirt I'd worn to the last event. There was no Michelle this time, no coordinator. Just Amanda, standing at the entrance with a fake smile, greeting the handful of people who'd actually shown up. Maybe 10 investors total. And half of them looked like they'd come just to watch the train wreck. I walked past her without making eye contact, moved to the back of the room. She didn't notice me. She was too focused on trying to hold herself together. Richard wasn't there. That was interesting. Amanda started her presentation at 7:30, but her voice was shaky, uncertain. None of the confidence from before. She showed slides, new projects, financial projections, testimonials. but everyone in the room knew they were looking at a sinking ship. One man interrupted her halfway through. "Why should we trust you, after everything that came out last month?" Amanda's smile trembled. "Those allegations were exaggerated, taken out of context. We're working with investigators to clear our name. Your license was revoked. Suspended. It's suspended pending review. And we're confident." "Where's Richard?" Another voice from the back. Amanda's face tightened. "Richard is focusing on other aspects of the business right now." Translation: Richard had abandoned ship. The room was quiet, hostile. I felt a surge of satisfaction. She was dying up there, slowly, painfully. She finished her presentation to silence. No questions, no interest. Just people standing up and leaving without a word. Within 10 minutes, the room was empty except for Amanda and me. She was gathering her things: laptop, folders, the printed slides nobody had wanted. Her hands were shaking. I walked to the front of the room. She looked up, saw me. Her face went through a series of emotions: surprise, fear, anger, something that might have been hope. "Dad," she said quietly, "I didn't know you were here." "I wanted to see it," I said. "The end." "This isn't the end. I can rebuild. I just need time." "It's over, Amanda." She stared at me. "You really hate me that much." "I don't hate you," I said. "I just don't care anymore. I'm your daughter. You stopped being my daughter when you wrote that note." She flinched like I'd hit her. "I said I was sorry. You said a lot of things. Most of them were lies." Tears started running down her face. Real ones this time, not the manipulative kind. She looked broken, destroyed. Part of me, a very small part, felt something like pity. The rest of me felt nothing but satisfaction. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you have to take everything from me?" I thought about that question, about the house I'd lost, about sleeping in my truck, about the note on the kitchen table. "Because," I said, "you took everything from me first, and you needed to know what that felt like. I'm losing my house, my marriage, my career, everything." "Good," I said. "Now you understand." She sobbed harder. "How can you be so cold?" "You taught me," I said. "Remember? Pack your things and welcome to the trash heap. You showed me exactly how cold you could be. I'm just matching your energy." She sank into a chair, face in her hands, shoulders shaking. I stood there for a moment, watching her fall apart. Then I turned and walked toward the door. "Dad?" she called after me. "Please, I need you." I stopped, looked back. "You needed me when I was useful," I said. "When I was signing papers and providing cover for your scams. Now you need me because you're desperate. That's not need. That's convenience. That's not fair. Life's not fair, Amanda. You taught me that too." I walked out. Behind me, I heard her crying, begging, calling my name. I didn't stop. The final blow came 3 weeks later. I was at the rental house, sitting on the back porch with Clara, drinking iced tea in the late afternoon sun, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Dempsey?" A woman's voice, professional, clipped. "Yeah." "This is Patricia Weston from the State Real Estate Commission. I'm calling about the investigation into Amanda Dempsey Reeves and Richard Reeves." "Okay." "We've completed our review of the documents you provided and the additional evidence gathered during our investigation. I wanted to inform you that we've made our final determination." I waited. "Ms. Dempsey Reeves's broker license has been permanently revoked. She's also being referred to the county prosecutor for criminal charges related to document fraud and investor misrepresentation. Mr. Reeves is facing similar charges. The investigation found systematic fraud across multiple projects spanning 2 years. How many projects? 8 that we've confirmed so far, possibly more. Total investor losses are estimated at over $2 million. $2 million. Jesus. Mr. Dempsey, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention. Without your documentation, we might never have uncovered the extent of the fraud. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for me. She was quiet for a moment. Then, regardless of your motivation, you stopped them from defrauding more people. That matters. After she hung up, I sat there staring at my phone. $2 million, 8 projects, criminal charges. I'd thought I was just exposing a few bad deals. Turns out I'd blown open something much bigger. Clara touched my hand. What did they say? I told her. She nodded slowly. You did the right thing. I destroyed her life. She destroyed yours first, and she was destroying other people's lives too. You stopped her. Does that make me a good person? Clara smiled. It makes you a person who fought back. That's enough. That night, Amanda called. I stared at the phone for a long time before answering. What? Not a question. A statement. They're charging me. Her voice was flat, empty. Criminal fraud. I could go to prison. I heard. This is your fault. No, I said. This is your fault. I just made sure people found out about it. I'm going to lose everything. My house, my marriage, my freedom. Are you happy now? I thought about it. About the note. About sleeping in my truck. About the 87 missed calls I'd never returned. Yeah, I said. I am. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I wish I'd never met you. The feeling's mutual, I said, and I hung up. The criminal trial wouldn't start for months, but the civil cases moved faster. By June, Richard had settled with 3 investors to avoid bigger lawsuits. He'd lost his house, his cars, everything. Word was he'd moved to another state, trying to start over somewhere nobody knew his name. Amanda was still fighting, still trying to prove the charges were exaggerated, that she'd been manipulated by Richard, that she deserved another chance. Nobody believed her. Her house went into foreclosure in July. The bank seized it, put it up for auction. She moved into a small apartment on the east side, the kind of place she'd once called depressing and beneath her standards. I drove past it once, saw her car in the parking lot, thought about stopping, didn't. In August, I got a letter in the mail, no return address, handwritten envelope. Inside, a single page. Amanda's handwriting. Dad, I know you'll never forgive me. I know I destroyed any chance we had at a relationship. I know I deserve everything that's happened to me. But I want you to know something. I loved you. I still love you. Even though I was cruel. Even though I threw you away. Even though I treated you like you were nothing. I loved you the whole time. I just didn't know how to show it in a way that didn't make me feel weak. I'm sorry. Amanda. I read it twice. Then I tore it in half and threw it in the trash. Clara found me on the back porch that evening. You okay? Yeah. She wrote you? Yeah. What did she say? That she loved me, that she was sorry. You believe her? Doesn't matter, I said. Sorry doesn't fix anything. Love doesn't undo what she did. Clara sat down next to me. You're at peace with this? I am. No regrets? None. She smiled. Good. You earned this, Frank. You fought back, and you won. That's all that matters. I looked out at the small yard, the fence that needed painting, the grass that needed mowing, this little rental house that was nothing like the home I'd lost. But it was mine, and nobody could take it. I'd won. Not the way people win in movies, with money or reconciliation or some moral lesson learned. I'd won by making the people who hurt me feel exactly what they'd made me feel, by taking away their image, their status, their carefully constructed lie of success, by proving that trash, when you underestimate it, can burn everything down. The night of the second showcase, the one where Amanda had tried and failed to salvage her reputation, had been the real ending, not the first event where I'd shared the evidence, but the second, the one where I'd watched her collapse on stage in front of the few people who had bothered to attend. That was when I knew I'd won. But there was one more thing I needed to do. One more moment I needed to see. The investor showcase where it had all come crashing down, the first one back in March, had been recorded. Someone had posted the video online. I'd watched parts of it, but never the whole thing. Tonight, I pulled it up on my laptop. Clara sat next to me on the couch. The video started with Amanda smiling, confident, launching into her presentation. Then the moment I started handing out the folders, the confusion spreading through the room, Richard's face going pale, Amanda's voice cracking, and then the chaos, investors yelling, Amanda crying, Richard trying to explain, failing, his whole persona collapsing. I watched it all the way through. When it ended, Clara turned to me. "How do you feel?" "Complete," I said. The final piece fell into place a week later. I got a call from the same prosecutor who'd opened the criminal case. She wanted to meet. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She was young, sharp-eyed, the kind of person who didn't waste words. "Mr. Dempsey, I wanted to update you on the case against Amanda Reeves." "Okay." "She's agreed to a plea deal, guilty plea to felony fraud, 3 years probation, full restitution to the investors, permanent ban from any real estate activity in the state. No prison? First offense, cooperation with the investigation, the victims are getting their money back, the judge approved it." I nodded. "And Richard?" "Same deal. They both took it. 3 years probation, no prison, just public humiliation, financial ruin, and the permanent stain of a felony conviction. It was almost perfect." "Thank you for letting me know," I said. "Mr. Dempsey," she paused. "What you did, exposing them the way you did, that was risky. It could have gone wrong in a lot of ways. But it didn't. No, it didn't. And because of you, a lot of people got their money back. That matters." I stood up to leave. "One more thing," she said. "Off the record, how does it feel, getting revenge like that?" I looked at her, thought about the note, about the 87 missed calls, about Amanda's face when she'd realized I was the one handing out the folders. "It feels," I said, "exactly like it should."